Well, it's always nice to have these blank weekends and a little bit of extra time to plan and build into the next game. But I think everyone's looking forward to the Columbus fixture now. You can end up having a little bit too long on the training field. So we're fully ready. The guys are enthused and they've mentally and physically, I think, recovered from the opening 4 games and ready to go again.
We'll start with Tim Sullivan, then go down the chat.
Gary, what is the health of your club looking like after a couple of weeks off, and are you expecting to have a full go group this weekend?
Well, you know full well that Dax is unavailable due to suspension. We picked up an injury with Teal Bunbury in the Salt Lake game, which will keep him out for a couple of weeks. So Teal will be unavailable, but outside of that, we're very good. Guys that have played in the international break are in full health, no issues there, so that's great. Always a little bit of a concern when they go away, whether they're going to come back in one piece. So delighted that both of those guys have got plenty of work, but they're in good shape.
Next, we'll go to Ben Wright. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Gary, you've obviously played Columbus several times over the last couple of years, but after kind of a rough year last year, it seems like at least early on the season, they've bounced back a bit. What have you seen from them early on, and what are you expecting from them this weekend?
Honestly, I think last year was a little bit of an anomaly. If you look around their group and some of the recruitment for their team, it's been very, very good. They're an experienced group. They're very comfortable in their style of play that has been a foundation of that group for 3 or 4 years now or more. They're extremely capable, and they have multiple dimensions to that team that can be very creative, difficult to deal with. Their form in the early stages of this season has been very, very good, and therefore I would suspect that they're in a confident mood. And barring some set-piece woes that they have had, and most sort of notably the San Jose game, we could have been running into a group that had started off slightly better than they currently have. So really, really tough place to go. Wonderful stadium. We enjoyed it there last year, but, a terrifically tough encounter that I would suspect will be extremely difficult and similar to the times we run into them before. There's been a little to choose between the teams. And I think our experience having played them will help in some aspects, but with 2 or 3 new additions to that group, there'll be a couple of players that the guys need to work out quickly to get the best out of it.
Thank you, Coach. Next, we'll go to Tim Sullivan and Drake Hills. Go ahead, Tim.
Gary, you've been able to go with a couple different philosophies, I guess, through your first few games here. A lot of that is because of the different ways that Dax has been able to contribute. How are you planning to kind of accommodate for not having him available during his red card suspension?
Look, we've shown a couple of different shapes that have included 3 midfield players, what I would class as genuine midfield players. We of course played up in Salt Lake with a back 3. A lot of that was due to the fact that Salt Lake themselves play that way, and I just felt on the day, having played that system a number of times last year, that the guys would be comfortable with it, and it proved that way. Columbus present a very different challenge to a Salt Lake, for numerous different reasons. The personnel in their group, and as I've already said, some of the dimensions. I'm not going to divulge how we're going to play or what we're after, but needless to say, we have to find a way from the outset of asking them some questions. It's the usual story, really. I think something that we've been able to do in pretty much all of the games other than Dallas thus far is we've been able to threaten the opposing side away from home in some difficult environments and create some nice opportunities. And that itself has given, I think, the group an inspired look, a confident feel. And of course, our world's different this year. You know, we're not, you know, we're not an unknown anymore. You know, we're a side that people are fully aware are going to be ultra competitive. We showed last year that we're more than capable of creating, and we showed a different dynamic to ourselves, I felt. And this year is about continuing that development and evolution. And in the 8 away games that we have, that's not going to be easy. But I think to this point, we've done a very good job of keeping our performances at a good level. We've not always got the results we necessarily deserved. But I think over the course of a season, if you can stay consistent, then you get your just desserts. But, you know, just to finish that off, we've also got to prove yet again that, you know, besides dead ball situations, we've been very, very difficult to create chances against. And we need to continue that against a confident and effective Columbus team.
Thank you, Coach. Next, we'll go to Drake Hills. Go ahead, Drake.
Hey, Gary, this international break has really like sliced the 8-game road trip like in half, kind of 4 and 4. I wanted to ask you about what you took away from the challenge at hand in terms of preparing for the games, going on the road week in and week out. What have you learned in terms of not only just the players and getting them ready, but about yourself? I mean, is anything in terms of how you're packing, how you're mentally preparing, the schedule? Are you leaving a suitcase by your door? You know, what are the takeaways from the first week?
You want to know what I'm traveling with, Jake? So you want me to tell you my toiletries? I take 2 pairs of pants, 1 pair of socks. Look, it's actually a really interesting question because, you know, I thought about this a lot before we went into the 8 games. I hope it's something that I don't see again, although the experience of it, of course, is very unique. It doesn't happen that often. And with any experience, you want to try and take something from it and maybe utilize it down the line somewhere. And I think the only comparison we can make was the run we had last year, where we had, I think it was 4 away from home, 1 at home, 3 away from home. So, you know, 7 out of 8 away. And there's some enormous challenges in that. Time zones in this case, travel, you know, the first 3 games we played, you know, completely different surfaces due to the conditions. You in the early part of the season, which is very, very different to the latter stages, you're playing against teams who genuinely believe they can win MLS Cup or the Shield. When you get towards the end of the season, a lot of those teams have gotten into a groove of form. They're either in a good position or they're well out of that good position, and maybe that challenge becomes a little bit easier. But everyone is on their mettle this time of year, and they're desperately looking to take 3 points off of a team that are in a difficult place. It's not easy. So I think that's the biggest challenge with regards to preparing and making sure that the guys are in the right place. I mean, I would like to say, looking at the data as well that we have constantly coming in, the guys are in a good physical place. So recovery and preparation has been good. I think in terms of the tactical and you know, match play element of it, we're preparing well. The fact that we have a game every weekend, of course, is a help without, you know, interjecting a game somewhere midweek, which would complicate issues at this point. But the challenge for us is difficult enough at this point, and I do think the guys have given a really good account of themselves. I'd love a point or 2 more at this stage, but you know, really for us, it's to be in a position when we come back home on May the 1st, where we're in a competitive spot. We're hopefully in a position to mount a challenge for the postseason, and we don't give ourselves too much work to do. So anything that we can get at this point is gonna make that task that much easier.
Thank you, Coach. Next, we'll go to Ben Wright, then Claudio Villalobos. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Gary. First of all, I'm impressed that you can make one pair of socks work on the road trip. But kind of tacking on to what you said there at the end, you guys are averaging a point through these first 4 games, kind of along the old adage of drawing on the road as a successful kind of output. Looking forward to these next 4 games, what's kind of your goal for these next 4 before you come home? What's a successful output in those 4?
Look, I think you're right. If we can come out of this period of 8 games with 8 points, I think we would have looked at it and said, you know what, if we'd have had a balanced schedule and there'd have been some home games, interjected in between those long away spells, that we might have had some victories. You're looking at a really good start to the season. So I think a minimum of 8 points for us. I'd like to think that the group's got more than that in them. But as you look at the challenges that we face, we go into a Columbus group that we've already spoken about in good form, started well. We go to Kansas, constantly in the playoffs, one of the most successful teams making the postseason in modern history of MLS. And then we've got 2 West Coast games that, by any stretch is always going to be tough because of the travel, because of the time change. And we run into 2 teams that we've not met before. So you could look at that in a positive sense, that they don't know a lot about us, but we're certainly not going to know an awful lot about them. Look, anything over 8 points in this stretch of games, and I'll be doing a jig.
We'll go to Claudio, then wrap up today's session with Coach Smith with Tim Sullivan. Go ahead, Claudio.
Thank you, Matt. Coach, I realize that you might have answered this question already. I just got here. If you did, I can go back and listen to your answers, no problem. But obviously, the problems or the issues that happened before, whenever Nashville has visited Columbus, we already know. So what might be different this time, in your opinion, about what Nashville brings to the table to a difficult stadium like it has? And that's the first part. And the second part has to do with tomorrow's draw at the FIFA. A coach like you, with all your experience, all you've done, about what do you expect tomorrow? What do you like about what's happening tomorrow, and what are your expectations?
Well, first of all, I think with regards to Columbus, going to a place that we've been before, it was a brand new venue when we went there last year, certainly for us. Electric atmosphere, very, very modern in the way that, I think the build of these stadiums now are bringing supporters closer to the field again and creating that vibrant feel about games. The Columbus team that we play this year, I think are in a better place, if only that they've started the season well. I've already said that I felt as though their season last year was a bit of an anomaly. They were unable to meet the sort of standards that they did the year before. But by the way, they set a very high bar when they won the championship the year before that. So, it's a tough one to be saying that they've underachieved in the last couple of years, because they certainly haven't done that. What we know is we've got to be at our best. And if we're at our best, then we'll get something out of the game. I've no doubt about that. If we fall short of that, then they'll take advantage of us because they have enough players to do that. Tomorrow, what's yours?
The World Cup.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I'm thinking about Columbus. Forgive me. Yeah, look, I mean, I think every 4 years you get the opportunity to get excited. As an England fan, you do a couple of things. You believe that you can win it from the outset, and then you end up deflated most times, and we don't reach the standards we necessarily would like to. And the press are always absolutely brutal with the players and of course the manager. But what I will say is, Gareth Southgate's done an incredibly good job, and we're in a terrific place, I think, as a country in the UK. For the US, I mean, it's wonderful for them to be back in the World Cup after a difficult qualification last time around. I'll be delighted to speak to Walker when he comes back and to congratulate him. But all in all, I think it sets the scene tomorrow for an exciting run.
Thank you, Coach. We'll wrap up today's session with Gary Smith with Tim Sullivan. Go ahead, Tim.
Hey, Gary, I almost kind of want to piggyback off of that a little bit, especially Sunday's game where Anibal and Walker kind of got into it a little bit. Did you get a chance to watch that? And knowing them as well as you do, what was going through your mind? And then when Walker comes back, when Anibal comes back, what do you communicate with them? Obviously happy and proud of Walker and maybe disappointment on Anibal's end. How do you, kind of deal with that with them and on the emotional side?
Yeah, I mean, I was actually at particular moments in the game, putting my head in my hands, especially when Anibal clattered into Walker, of all people. Those two guys knowing each other so well. Look, it's a difficult situation for Anibal at this point because the two penalties that are conceded, I'm sure deep down he'll feel dreadful about. But listen, it shouldn't detract from what he's been able to do for his country. Captain, the way he leads that group. I think the result last night shows you exactly the sort of pride those guys have in playing for their country, to turn around after a really tough defeat, to be eliminated, and then to go and win in the last of the qualification games. Tells you an awful lot about the character of that group, that Panama group. But that won't stop him being very, very disappointed, of course. For Walker, it'll be the other end of the scale. He captains the team last night, although they get beat. But I think the qualification into the World Cup and what that means for all of those guys, the stage they can play on, the opportunity that they have in front of them, is life-changing. It's a memory and an opportunity that, few people get to experience. As far as their relationship, I mean, they get on great. I'm sure there'll be some disappointment and maybe a few little nasty little jibes at some point. But listen, they're good pros. They're whatever it is, they'll get over it and they'll get on with it. And they've got a job to do here, and they're both immersed in what we need done. So I don't see that being any problem at all.
Thanks, Matt. Dave, good to see you again. As I asked Gary, with this international break, I sliced this 8-game road trip like in half, four first and then 4 again. I'm curious to know, you've been in the league for a while now, so going on the road several times is not new, but for 8 straight, I'm curious to know if you took away anything that maybe benefited you preparing yourself to go play on the road week in and week out, not only on the field, but off the field as well.
I mean, we have kind of gotten into a rhythm of every week's kind of been the exact same with the training days, day off, and then leave on Friday or Thursday and just play the away game, get the next day off or something. So our travel schedule has been like clockwork every single week. So I guess you've kind of gotten used to that. And then I would say last year was kind of similar because I think our first 11 of 15 games were home last year. And then the end of last season was very heavily road dominant. So we kind of got a taste of it last year, just being on the road for, I think it was 9 of our last 12 games. So basically just flip-flopped last season and this season. So hopefully finish strong at home for the rest of this season.
Tim Sullivan, you're on with Dave Romney.
Hey, Dave, how you doing, man? Going into a match against the Columbus team that you've played more times than most of the teams that you're going to see on this long road trip, what do you remember from previous games against them? And then what do you take into this year's edition as you head to whatever their new stadium is called, Lower.com Field?
Yeah. Columbus is a solid team. I would say they are one of the odd teams where they don't high press like crazy, even when they're at home. I think we played there a couple times where they kind of have their line of confrontation more at their mid block, and they just defend really, really well in that mid block, but they're not going to just sprint all over the field and all out press you like a Red Bull would. I'd say out of goal kicks, maybe they kind of start high, but then once you break down that first initial line of defense, they usually just are a very well organized mid-block team. And I think that's just going to be our challenge of just kind of moving them back and forth across the field and try to break them down in a middle or lower block. But yeah, nothing we haven't seen before. We got a shutout there last year, so hopefully we can get another shutout there this year.
We'll go to Claudio Villalobos and then Ben Wright. Go ahead, Claudio.
Thank you, Matt. Again, Dave, you're the one. This is what I think it is. You're the one that is closer to Zimmerman because of the position on the game, and besides perhaps Joe. What do you notice? Is there anything different that you can probably tell us about the times when he comes back from the national team after his great performances? He's been playing really well there. That you can say is different anytime he comes about. This time he's coming from qualifying to the World Cup. I mean, that's not something that happens every day. What can you tell us about his form or what he says after he goes out and play for the national team?
I mean, I haven't seen him yet, so I don't know how excited he's been or what his kind of emotions are this time around, but I'm sure he's stoked. I'm proud of him. He's been playing really well. He deserves every minute he's gotten with the national team. I think he's been kind of the stalwart of their defense and been a real leader for them. So I think he's been playing really well and he deserves it. And then when he comes back with us, he's just an extra level of confidence and leadership and just kind of being more comfortable in his role. It's just kind of the center pin of our back three, I guess. And I don't know. Yeah, he's just been playing well, and I think he deserves the starts he's been getting with the national team.
We'll go to Ben Wright next. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Dave. I mean, obviously with the new schedule, it feels like this is one of the first times that you guys haven't had to play through an international break. So I'm kind of wondering what that was like for you. Were you able to take in some more of the games than normal, and just how are you guys feeling after getting a week off?
Feeling good. I actually, this past weekend, I got to see my sister and mom in Denver for the first time in a while. So that was kind of nice. My sister was a ER trauma nurse during the pandemic, so I didn't see her for like 2 years or so. So it was nice to finally get a little mental rest and go visit her. And yeah, it was definitely really nice. It's super tough for the international guys. When all of us get a nice little weekend off, they're playing 3 games in like 6 days, 7 days. So just for them mentally, just try to recover as much as possible. Physically, they're probably in a lot worse spot than us, but yeah, I mean, they've been doing it for the last 2 years, so I guess they're getting used to it. But for us, yeah, it was nice to kind of get a break off and watch some other games, kind of get into some other things. But yeah, I don't know, I kind of got sidetracked. I don't know if I answered your question right. Sorry.
We'll go to Tim Sullivan next. Go ahead, Tim.
Dave, when you guys have taken the field the first 4 games this year, Gary mentioned you've basically been impenetrable in the run of play. And a similar issue to what you guys had last year, which was the set piece defense, has been kind of your downfall so far. What do you guys do to, obviously you go out on the training field and work it, but what can you do, from a practical perspective to tighten that up and make sure it doesn't continue to be a problem? Yeah,
I mean, we've been ending every session with set pieces. I mean, we're working on it. We're trying to figure out what it is, but I think at the end of the day, it comes down to how badly do you want it? How much are you attacking the ball? How aggressive are you? How kind of proactive are you being? And then also just like, we have so many different scenarios that we play through our heads and what they tell us to do, where if they leave a guy at the top of the box, what do we do? If this guy comes in here? So it's just about knowing exactly what your role is and then executing aggressively, attacking the ball, everything. And then sometimes you just get unlucky. I mean, every team's going to get scored on set pieces. Sometimes the ball just ends up on a guy's head. Sometimes you didn't defend well enough. So it's tough to, I mean, sometimes you kind of just have to say, all right, that one was unlucky. But I feel like for the majority of ours, there's been times where you could say like, all right, we need to do better here, stuff like that. But I mean, the set piece that the U.S. gave away last night, the second one is just kind of a broken play. Sometimes when it's a broken play, it's literally just pinball in there. Someone just shoots it on frame and it just like doesn't break, luckily, to some guy standing right there. So you kind of have to think some of them are going to be unlucky. You kind of just deal with those, but then the majority of them are preventable and we have to do better, and you just kind of be more accountable, I guess. But it's definitely frustrating. It's definitely frustrating that we've been so good in the run of play and we've been good defensively, and then just to give away soft goals on set pieces, it really takes this thing out of our confidence. But we know we're a good team and we're going to fight back, and once we get at home, we're gonna get a good run of games and hopefully get back up in the table.